Gang, it's me. Um, so today I thought we would talk about why does God allow bad things to happen to good people? And it's a subject that everybody wants to know about. It could be a sore subject. It could be something that is hard for people to understand, to grasp. But it's an important one. It's something that we really need to understand and have a good concept of and an understanding of what God is, what He's really a part of, and what He has no part of. So let me explain it like this. Um, Bad, God doesn't orchestrate bad. He doesn't. If I always use the expression when I would have my counseling sessions with people, if it ain't good, it ain't God. And unfortunately, we live in a fallen world, and because God is a covenant keeping God, He's all about covenants. He's got rules. He lives by His own rules. So when God gave this planet to Adam and Eve and entrusted it to them, and then Adam and Eve gave it up to the devil. God lost His part in this. We gave away all of our power to the devil, who then took over the planet. But through Jesus, we now have an option. We have a way out. But at the same time, we have free will, which is something that He's blessed us with because God created us for fellowship. He loves us. He wants us to be a part of His family. He wants us to love Him because we love Him, not because it's something that we have to do. He wants us to know Him intimately so that we can have relationship with Him and enjoy Him and the blessings that He has for us. And that's why He gave us free will, so that we would make this choice on our own. We would decide and realize and recognize who He is, that He sent Jesus for us, and that we would then in turn have a relationship with Him and know Him and cherish Him and love Him as our God and Father. And but to have that happen, He has to give us free will. Well, that's a two-edged sword because we can definitely, and we have, messed up our lives and made some really poor decisions, but God too has a way out of that. God promises us that out of everything, even out of all the misery and bad in our lives, that He will turn it around and He will take all evil and somehow make it good. And He does. And we just have to recognize that, and we have to see that. And I was blessed with by doing my counseling sessions, by having myriads of strangers come into my presence and know the details and the information in their lives. There were patterns of things. There were things that I kept seeing, and a big thing that I kept seeing is a lot of people struggle with death, especially unexpected death. Not that any death is good, but it's almost when somebody when your great grandmother's in her 90s and she's gets struck with terminal cancer, you have an idea it's coming. There's, in a sense, you know that it's coming. But when a child who's 14 years old and gets hit by a car and dies, that's not that any death is good, but there seems to be a stronger sting, a bigger bite with something like that. But I started to discover these. It's hard. I know this is going to be hard for some people to see, but there's almost a blessing in the bad that happens. I would always give this example. There was, I remember, I believe her name was Polly Klaas, and it might have been in the early 90s. She was abducted, and was horrible. She was a young girl. She might have been 8 or 9, and this was in California. And she was murdered, tortured, raped, and ultimately killed by this gentleman. And they caught the guy who did it. And I remember in court, he was in court, and her parents were there. And I just remember seeing the anguish and the misery on the faces of these parents that had to sit there and relive and hear and the testimony, the evidence of the horrid things that happened to their child. And this horrible man who did this had no remorse, none. When he was given the chance to apologize and address everybody, he made a horrid, crude comment that I'm not even going to give him any recognition for on this broadcast. I won't do it. But it was such a slap in the face to her parents. And I remember at that time thinking to myself, God, why would you let that happen? Why does this little girl have to go through what she went through? And then I started to see things. And from her death, as tragic and horrific as it was, her father began a campaign on helping find abducted children. It's been around the world precedented, as he has saved through his foundation of finding and helping and bringing to justice the people who have abducted and killed or tortured children. And he started this organization that found these girls and boys that have been going through, who have sex trafficking, and he's dedicated his life to this foundation in honor of his daughter. And the lives that he has saved is multitudes. And as horrid as it sounds, God took something that was so awful and so heart-wrenching, and he turned it into a miracle. He turned this man, if he didn't go through what he went through, he wouldn't have never started this organization. He would have never saved not one life, let alone thousands, and impacted how we handle these cases now. I think he was also a big part of the Amber Alert system. So it was a tragic, horrible thing, and God took it and made it unbelievable and turned this man's life into saving untold numbers of people and children. So it was horrible. I get it. But he turns things around. Now, I learned some other things that people are going to argue with me about this, but I know it's true because I've seen it and I've experienced it. And through the gift that God has given me, when I recognize somebody who's passed away, and I would address them and speak to these people, and then in turn talk to their families. When it's your time and you're destined to go, and little Polly Klaas, she wasn't there in her body when this man was doing this stuff to her. And I don't care what anybody says. I hope that you all can see my sincerity, and that I know I'm speaking the truth when I was shown this. These people are not there. Their bodies are there. Their voices are there. There might be reactions to things, but she was gone. She was already destined to be in heaven, and she was taken up long before she felt 1 ounce of pain. And that's the truth. And I've seen it time and time and time again, that when I've communicated with people who've passed away, these tragic, horrid, torturous deaths. They're not living those. They're not experiencing that. They're taken long before then. Sorry about that. That's my dog. Sorry about that. I try to do these without them interfering, but I'm sorry. Ignore that. But anyway, I know that these people are not suffering the way that we think that they are. So I hope that gives somebody some comfort somewhere, because if they're already destined to go, they're already ready to go to heaven. There's no need for them to experience that pain. It's kind of like that old expression: if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound. And in reality, if that tree was dying a tragic death and there was no one to hear it, that tree was taken up into heaven. So there's some consolation in that, and it's the truth. I've experienced it time and time again. I've seen people who've really suffered some horrible things, and but they didn't suffer that. They were taken long ago. So I hope that gives somebody some comfort. But in saying that, there are times when people do, definitely suffer. I remember seeing God showing me there was a beggar on the street in Chicago, and this man was begging, and I every day when I would pass him years and years ago when I used to live out there, I felt bad, and I didn't understand why does God let that happen? Why you can prevent him from being on the street and being homeless, and but he was over time. I talk to people. I'm a talker, so I'm friendly. So I started talking to him. I was giving him money, and so I was talking to him, and he actually was a very smart man. He worked for a big company, but he started drinking, and his drinking got him in huge trouble, and he lost his family, he lost his wife, he lost his job, and it's kind of a typical kind of story, but it was sad, and he's on the street begging, and so I'm seeing this, talking to him and being upset about this, and God showing me that one day there was a man who also passed this guy often, and this guy was he had been an alcoholic. This gentleman who would pass, and he was going through some really stressful stuff in his marriage, and he was giving money to this homeless guy, and at one point he talked to this homeless guy, and the homeless guy told him his story. And upon hearing that story about where alcohol had gotten him, this guy the second guy completely turned his life around. He saw this man, he saw him every day, he got to hear his story and realized, you know what, I'm an alcoholic anyway. If I take one drink, I could be where this man is. And it turned his life around. It turned his life around, and he's I don't know, but I was shown that he made the right decision, and it was the best thing that he could have done. So here's this man sitting, on the side of a building begging for money, had actually completely changed somebody's life for the better, affected them in a huge way. And this beggar doesn't know that he did that, but he did. How many more people has he affected from sitting there? He affected me. He got me to the point where I was concerned and praying and asking God, and God showed me these things. So I actually learned a tremendous lesson through somebody else's pain. And I realized that this man, through a series of bad decisions from his free will and temptations from the devil, And oh, by the way, the devil is alive and well on this planet. Is he ever? And if people don't think he doesn't exist, they're sorely mistaken, because he does. And he's constantly talking in your ear, trying to get people to make the wrong decisions, do the wrong things, and God's on the other end trying to fix everything. But okay, so again, another thing I learned was that from this man's unfortunate decisions in his life and where he was, he affected somebody in a grand way. Then I looked, even at my own life and the suffering that I had gone through as a child, always being different, never quite fitting in anywhere, and then having the issues that I had with not being able to take care of myself the way that I should, and being royally picked on and abused, and it absolutely shaped my life for many, many years. It was the bane of my existence. What I lived and experienced as a kid, and how I saw myself, and how I despised myself, and how I suffered, really, well, it was torturous within itself, and not pleasant. And that continued for years and years and years. And but in hindsight, I look back on that and I realize now I've been, and have been, actually my whole life, the defender of the low guy. I've always been. I'm a protector and a defender, and I will go to the ends of the earth to help the bullied kid, to help the bullied adult, to help the woman who's being battered by her boyfriend, or the boyfriend being battered by his girlfriend. It goes both ways. I've seen it both ways. It's amazing the stuff that God has shown me through visions and through my counseling sessions with people. It happens more often than not. Another thing I saw more often than not, the women were cheating on their husbands over the husbands cheating on the men. That was a big surprise to me, but it happens. And I just want you to know that when hard things happen, when things that you don't understand why they're happening. Why is my son born with this disability and these other kids get to go around, and why do I have two sons with this? Well, you know why? You know why? Because God entrusts you with that child, because he knows that you're going to take care of that baby better than anybody else. And you're going to have the compassion and the understanding and the sympathy for them, and the strength that they're going to need, so that they can make an impact on this world, and they can help people that maybe have the same issues that they have. And they never get that way if they had Barbie Susie Homemaker as their mother. I look at my boys. I have two wonderful sons who I adore, totally different from each other. You couldn't get polar opposites from each other more than these two are. But my oldest son has many, 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 many issues, and he was born that way. He was born with a lot of physical things and emotional things, and he comes by it naturally, I guess, when you consider who his mother is. And but I can see in hindsight, when I look at my own life, why a lot of what I went through, because God knew that I was going to have my oldest son, and knew that I needed to be an understanding, compassionate, patient mother with him. And maybe another mother wouldn't have the ability to do it like I can, so that then in turn they can turn around and make a difference in this world. There are no accidents. God doesn't make bad things happen. He doesn't do that. The devil does that. The devil causes illness, disease, sickness. He does it through tempting us to do the wrong things. He does it through making us believe things that aren't true. He does it by, complete and utter deception. But when we have a relationship with God, when we trust in Him, we can be guaranteed and know that anything that the devil puts in our way, anything that he does to us, anything that he tries to do to discourage us, to hurt us, to take us down, God will turn it around. He will turn it around. He promises us that. And that's absolutely what He's done, even in my own life. And if you look back on your life, and well, if you don't really have a relationship with God, you need to get one because you'll notice it and you'll see things so much more clearly, and you'll see how He helps. He comes to you when you need Him, and He will get you through the hard stuff. He'll get you through, and it's not easy. He never promised us easy. But He did promise us that He would be there for us. He does promise us that, no matter what, cast your cares on Him. I physically do this. When I'm really feeling like I just can't take another minute of it, I'll say my prayers and I'm like, okay, God, I'm casting this onto You. And I literally cast it. I throw it and I say, okay, I can't do this. This is too big for me. This is Your problem now. And I let go. And I trust that He's going to take care of it, and He does. And it's amazing. My husband and I just learned this lesson. Well, I didn't just learn it, but there was a great example of it recently. We had a fairly big wedding anniversary that just came up, and we spent that anniversary, as I told you guys, financially, I've been in a mess for a while now. Well, we filed for bankruptcy. And so we spent that anniversary in a lawyer's office signing the papers to file for bankruptcy. And it was, when you look at it, I was thinking to myself, when we got married, this is not where I thought we would be spending our such and such year anniversary, in a lawyer's office signing a bankruptcy statement. And but we both, it's funny how God works, because I've learned to cast my care, because I've learned to appreciate what I do have, because of this journey that God's had me on. We both kind of laughed and said, well, this isn't, what we planned, but you know what? We're okay. We got each other. We have our health. We love each other more than ever, which in and of itself is amazing. And it's not what either one of us would have chosen, but it was okay. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. So much worse could be going on. And to me, that was God. That was a God moment. He filled my heart. He filled my husband's heart, where we could have really been suffering and resenting each other or being angry and disgusted. Instead, we loved each other through it. And then another thing, we talked about it after, and I said, see, if we would have worried this whole time and we're trying to figure it out and we're bickering back and forth, we would have ended up in the same place at the same time in the lawyer's office doing the same thing, but we would have suffered every minute of it up until this point. But we didn't. We went through the troubles that we were going through and the financial, hardship that we were in with a smile on our face and just keep going and trusting God with, whatever we can do, we could do. And it ended up that, we had to do this, and it's unfortunate. And I vow that I'm paying all these people back whenever God can will bless me financially. But until then, this is what we had to do. And but again, I'm just saying that if we would have worried and stressed over it and bickered and fought and blamed each other and went over everything that we could have done differently or should have done differently and what we shouldn't have bought and did, all that other stuff, wouldn't have mattered. We still would have been in that lawyer's office on that anniversary doing the same thing. So, but we didn't, and we were a heck of a lot more peaceful, and we had a great day. We went to lunch at this little cheeky little hole in the wall in town, and we spent $30, but it was nice. And again, at the end of the day, we love each other, and it's okay. And this too shall pass, and it always does. And and I know that again, this was. God sees ahead what I don't see, and if I know He put me through this journey, this 3 years. He started all this to get me strong enough to get to this point. If I wasn't learning everything that He's been teaching me over these 3 years, this would have been a really different situation for me. I don't know if I could have emotionally handled any of this. The pressure of my eldest son going through some really horrible stuff at the same time we are, and it's been extremely stressful, or could have been so much worse. And I know that God protected me and put me on this path so that I could learn to let go and let God and cast my cares onto Him, which is what I've done. And it's made it so much easier. There's peace in it. It doesn't get rid of your problems, but it makes them so much easier. And, heck, if you could have a problem and have it easier, why not do it that way? So I guess, I wish I could be more detailed in how I'm trying to explain this to you. I feel like I'm not articulating this very well, but I just want you to know that when you're in relationship with God, when you trust in Him, when you talk to Him, when you read the Bible, when you study it, when you accept Jesus in your heart, when you know that Jesus died on the cross for us to have this relationship with God, then you don't have to suffer in this world. You don't have to worry. When bad things happen to good people, it's not God doing it. It's the devil doing it. But what God does is He'll take from that and He'll make something beautiful out of it. Whatever it'll be, He absolutely will turn it around and make something beautiful out of every broken, tragic decision and life, and every suffering that you've suffered on this planet will not be in vain. None of it's in vain. None of it. He makes sure of that. And then the other point is I want people to realize that when there are tragic and horrific deaths, I was shown over and over and over again that people don't suffer those deaths. They're gone long before their heart stops beating. They might have expressions on their faces. They might have, they might yell out something, but they're not there. They're not feeling it. God takes them away. They're not suffering through that. So with that being said, I hope you all have a great night, and I'll see you next time. God bless.